Atomfall is weird, but only in the best kinds of ways. Everyone's comparing it to the Fallout games, but that just doesn't do it justice. Atomfall takes a different approach than most to its survival and RPG mechanics, and in a time when so many games are open world, this one settles just fine with a smaller yet more richly packed environment. Its characters help you get a feel for what's really going on, paired with the many notes and logs scattered around the game world, all of them pretty much adding to the overall narrative. And that is of course what I'll be fully explaining in this video. What is Atomfall? Who are all these characters? Why are there freaking mushroom people? And what is this robot doing? Sir? I'm sure you have questions, and I have answers. So let's get into the full story of Atomfall.
The woods are dark and the woods lie deep.
Our story begins in the late 1500s to early 1600s when a meteorite fell from the sky, impacting in Britain, specifically a region called Cumberland. For centuries, nobody seemed to stumble upon this thing, astonishingly, until around the late 1940s when some slate miners happened to discover it buried underground. For some time even before the meteorite was found, the local people considered the mine potentially haunted, having a long history of tragic worker fatalities and reports of voices in the depths. Not the most inviting place. The British government eventually got wind of this suspicious, mystical meteorite, and you could bet on them taking a big interest in it. A sector known as the British Atomic Research Division, or BARD, was sent to handle it. They got to work finding out that the meteorite was quite special. Dubbed as Oberon, the scientists hurriedly built a facility around it, called the Interchange, as well as the wind-scale atom plant on top to cover for their experiments, using the plant as basically a red herring for their sussy undercover operations. Then they started to drill, baby, drill. As they started to piece together what the hell this thing was, they extracted a type of ore or mineral that they called oberite, which was later refined and used in atomic batteries and potentially other scientific marvels. As they kept digging, the scientists began to encounter an unknown fungus, and this was the catalyst for the disaster that would eventually follow. The scientists began experimenting with the unknown fungus and discovered that it possessed amazing cognitive enhancing properties. Through running clinical trials, they produced the training stimulants, allowing people who took the drug to learn new skills at an insanely rapid pace. Basically super meth, but for raising your IQ and getting you to learn new skills. Some of the scientists had a bad feeling about all this, especially because there were strange side effects from the fungus. One of said scientists, Dr. Alan Holder, began immediately trying to devise a method to stop the side effects of fungus poisoning, but before he could make significant ground, an explosion shook the region. This was the day of despair. It turned out that X-ray scans on Oberon 8 days prior revealed that there was a large cavity inside the core and that the mining was ordered to be halted until the scientists could determine if it was even safe to keep drilling. One of the lead scientists, Dr. Diane Garrow, however, was on the power trip of a lifetime. She was the head of the robotics division and used oberite to make big strides in tech research. But because of the pause in the flow of oberite, this forced her to stop her research, thus hurting her pride. She demanded they resume mining immediately, and this would end up being a catastrophic demand going beyond mere selfishness. Whether she knew it or not, this was an act of complete recklessness, resulting in what would be countless lives lost. The mining resumed, and not long after, the drill hit the core cavity and generated a resonance feedback, which caused a massive explosion, setting off a chain reaction, causing a full-on meltdown of the atom plant, though radiation was hardly an issue compared to what happened next. More of Oberon's fungus rapidly leaked and spread out, and a gigantic column of an EMP jam formed, known as the interference field. Being the self-absorbed, egotistical woman that Dr. Garrow was, she immediately evacuated, but before doing so, she initiated a lockdown of the interchange, effectively trapping everyone else inside the facility and leaving them for dead, either to succumb to the fungus, radiation, or starvation.
And on the evacuation convoy, I'm sorry, Alan. There was no time. Oberon must remain secure.
Diane, there's dozens of us still in the lab. Please suspend the quarantine, just for a few minutes.
At some point during this, Dr. Holder continued his experiments in spite of the dire situation of, him and his colleagues being trapped inside the infected facility, and was able to invent a countermeasure to prevent the fungus from turning him into a feral. He was later even able to escape the interchange through a secret tunnel, then returning to a small pre-existing base of operations in the nearby Windham Village. While the quarantine was in effect, the fungus nonetheless started to spread much faster and wherever it could, through the caves and in the surrounding area. It spread through the soil and inevitably the people. A cult of worshippers known as the Druids came to worship this fungus, becoming followers of the soil. They just love the dirt, I guess. Can't do nothing about it. Part of why they follow the soil is because they hear voices from it, I suppose through the will of the fungus, what seems to be some kind of hive mind. It tells them to reclaim humanity's technological innovations and return to a primitive time. And so they obeyed, capturing and claiming settlements in the area, imprisoning and sacrificing non-believers, and tossing all the high-tech stuff they could find into one giant hole in the ground that I like to call the fungussy. Normally, I'm sorry. Normally when people are exposed to the fungus, like the scientists, they become a mutated humanoid like the ferals or thralls. The Druids, however, were able to maintain some level of human intellect and awareness due to a special tonic that they came upon. Within about a week after the Day of Despair, the military was sent in. Led by Captain Grant Sims, they began setting up concrete walls around the area, the name of which became the Zone, much like Stalker. And with that, the military established a base in Windham Village and a stronghold in Skethermore, a nearby valley. Not long after, Sims realized that there was no way to get in contact with the Royal Air Force, or RAF, due to the interference field, which was a bit of a problem because of a contingency in place for the RAF. Said contingency stated that if the quarantine were breached, or at risk of being breached, they were to firebomb the entire zone, wiping out everything and everyone, including Sims and his men. With the realization that they were essentially abandoned and isolated in the zone with no hope of backup, Sims and his soldiers began going by the edgy name of Protocol, and became far more authoritative, harsh, and tyrannical to the residents of Windham. With the Windscale plant being disastrously melted down, the public fearing for the safety of their country, and the zone established, with all its strange and newly emerging factions, and of course the spreading of Oberon, we jump ahead to 5 years later. Things have settled. But not in a good way. After 5 years, that Dr. Garrow actually comes back to the zone, but not because she feels remorse for what she did. No. Dr. Garrow returns because she merely wanted a sweet, succulent sample of Oberon for her research. Garrow rides along with a military or scientist convoy, which, according to their corporal's log, was known as Convoy 5. They were split between a helicopter and land-based vehicles. Garrow rode in on the helicopter equipped with experimental anti-interference field equipment, which they hoped would prevent the EMP field from royally boning them. But the equipment failed, which caused her helicopter to crash land. Dr. Garrow was the only survivor of the helicopter crew. If only she could feel survivor's guilt. On the other hand, the land-based squad of Convoy 5 had a peculiar concern. The convoy was infiltrated by a small group of Russians led by someone with the codename Agravane, with the goal of meeting up and finding out what happened to a past group of allies that had managed to infiltrate Windscale the same day the explosion happened 5 years prior. Within Convoy 5, a fresh-faced civilian named Joyce Tanner rode along too, operating the radio sets, right before their group ended up getting ambushed by something a little different from an EMP field, something a little more vegan. Fuck, I blew this guy up so bad he went into the wall. Yeah, so these crazy shroom sniffers killed everyone like they were playing Rust. The only survivor here was the radio boffin, or technician, Joyce Tanner. She'll come into play in a bit. Much like Tanner having narrowly escaped her own demise, Dr. Garrow, walking away from her helicopter crash site, eventually stumbled around the zone, walking right into Windham Village, where she was promptly arrested. Good job, Captain Sims. High five. He seemingly was trying to figure out any information from her that would be useful in his own escape, because bro did not sign up to be stranded in the place. So perhaps she was his ticket out. She wasn't budging on info, though, and Sims later plopped her in a secure prison in the Skethermore Valley.
Stay out of that place, be you blithe, be you good.
That brings us to the beginning of your journey, where you, the protagonist, the player, wake up. Your name doesn't really matter because you have neither voiceover nor any semblance of a character beyond your ability to select dialogue options. Talk about a silent protagonist, jeez. You get off the lovely bed that you were previously napping on and are confronted by this frantic lad in a hazmat suit who's bleeding everywhere. He says he's looking for Dr. Powell, and as you try and tell him you have no idea who you are or where you are, he's rather flabbergasted by your ignorance. He explains the basics. You're trapped in the quarantine zone surrounding the Windscale atom plant. There are people out in the zone that can give you information to ultimately help you escape. Once you help him out by crafting a bandage with some rags and alcohol to stop the bleeding, he gives you his keycard, an item that'll help you escape the bunker that you're in and eventually access the interchange. But for now, he sends you off, asking that you simply escape the zone and warn the rest of the world about what happened here once and for all. With your mission clear, you leave the bunker and enter your first region known as Slattendale. And from here, as the player, you pretty much have free reign to go anywhere and do anything you want. Want to kill an important quest NPC that allows you to unlock one of the 6 endings? Go for it, game won't stop you. But speaking of the 6 endings, since the game doesn't have a defined linear path and instead uses a unique system of leads, basically your own character's journal, as to different branching and often interconnecting paths of evidence that lead down different narrative paths, we'll instead focus on these 6 endings and the characters involved, since while they don't include all of the characters in the entire game, for example those in side quests, they still are the most central to the plot. And the first of said characters that you meet, if you can call him a character, is the Operator. Not long after stepping out of the bunker you start in, you'll come across a red telephone box. A phone is ringing. If you choose to answer it, you're met with a strange voice, known only as the Operator.
Oberon must die.
He's pretty vague, but he makes one thing clear: kill Oberon. So he must really not like this Oberon fella. Though at this point your character generally shouldn't be aware of the fact that Oberon isn't quite a person as much as it is a seemingly alien artifact. Nonetheless, the Operator represents one of these 6 ending paths, as you'll continue to get calls from him via nearby telephone booths, and you pretty much don't really need to do a whole lot for him beyond picking up the phone. He's kind of like the last-ditch option if you end up killing all the main human NPCs like an absolute psychopath. And speaking of human NPCs, while you're likely to run into side characters like the weary slate miner Reg Stansfield, the kindly Nat Buckshaw, or the outgoing Molly Jowett, after stumbling into the heavily guarded Wyndham Village, it's hard to avoid meeting a rather intense man.
They dine at the table of Castafelki.
Captain Grant Sims introduces himself as you walk up, and quickly makes it clear he'd appreciate your cooperation. He likes to keep a tight, iron-clenched grip on the village of Wyndham, and doing that means demanding citizens report any suspicious activity. The man does not trust the local people, mostly because he's an ass. Going down his questline, or rather his related leads, sees you prancing around town and finding suspicious activity, then reporting at least one event. For example, you could report a murder in the church that the pastor asks you to kindly keep quiet about.
Has been a what?
Or a baker who's keeping her very ill husband locked up in the upstairs to her house. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Whichever suspicious thing you tell Sims about, he'll become your best bud soon after, and he tasks you with something surprisingly big for someone he just met. He gives you access to the Skethermore Gate in the southeast of the village, so that you can head to Skethermore and access a highly guarded prison where he's kept none other than Dr. Diane Garrow. Due to his lack of luck prying any viable information from her, he hopes you'll be a little more convincing. If you choose to travel through the Skethermore Valley and into the prison, reaching Dr. Garrow, you'll get a chance to speak with her. And this is where her path opens up. See, you could just interrogate her as Sims instructed, or you could hear her out. She asks you to free her immediately, and she's willing to reveal the location of a rather valuable item, one she made herself, called the Signal Redirector. This thing basically serves as a tool to toggle on and off certain circuitry from a distance, like a very short-range hacking device. It's being kept in a nearby security office, she tells you. And once you retrieve it, you're able to use the redirector to unlock her cage door. After you free all the prisoners, the prison goes into full emergency mode and everyone's on alert. And of course, Dr. Garrow flees to a nearby interchange tunnel that's normally locked, but she just casually makes it through and, of course, locks the door behind her. If the many colleagues that she left to die weren't bad enough, this bitch just closed the door on you. You, Garrow! After going around the map the long way to get to the interchange, unless there's some alternative closer route I'm not aware of, You find Dr. Garrow in the central processor, the kind of central room of the interchange. And after not apologizing you for the absolute dick move she pulled back there, she immediately starts asking you for more favors, telling you to go to a large dam in the Casterfell Woods region to the northwest. And speaking of dams, that leads us to our next main character, who happens to be located near said Casterfell Dam if you haven't already activated the interchange, in which case she'll actually initially be found having snuck into the gargantuan facility. Either way you meet her, Joyce Tanner is immediately an oddly friendly woman, and she tries to cozy up to you right away. Her whole thing is that she wants you to power on 3 radio towers across the region so that ultimately the two of you can break through the interference field and contact the outside world for evac. In case you don't recall from earlier, Joyce Tanner is the other survivor of the ambushed Convoy 5, particularly the group that was said to have been infiltrated by Russian spies. Just food for thought. If you follow through with what Tanner asks you to do in activating the 3 towers, you get some kind of encrypted message over the radio mentioning Agravane. Wait a sec, that was the name of the Russian spy. Boom, plot twist that probably everybody saw coming. Joyce Tanner is the Russian spy, and she's looking for her lost comrades that had initially snuck into this area on the day of the disaster. Before you can really scrutinize her though, Tanner sends you to the same dam that Dr. Garrow ultimately asks you to go to, but if you decide that instead of pursuing Tanner's leads too far and you'd instead prefer to frolic around in the forest because you have a problem with authority, well, you're in luck because our next character is hardly an authoritative woman. This one's more gentle. Along your frolicking through Casterfell Woods, you're likely to come upon a flyer mentioning a Mother Jago. And if you follow the flyer and eventually reach the outside of an old mine where she is said to reside, you'll find her. On the surface, Mother Jago is a lovely, polite old lady, and as she says, I don't bite. But while she might not bite, there is a more than freaky path you will follow if you decide to entertain this woman. Mother Jago wants to find her special book, as well as her recipe for a strange serum, one which gives significant resistance to the feralization of the fungus. Basically, it prevents people from turning fully into mindless feral zombies from the fungus, although they can still have the whole pale skin and freaky eyes thing happen. Her book and serum recipe are namely located in a castle in the woods, but not just any castle. This one is infested with druids, the local crackheads that worship the soil and kill anyone who doesn't build their Minecraft house exclusively out of dirt. So you head to the castle.
Just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah?
Is that meat? Is that human meat? And after you return, having just been mildly traumatized by all that you witnessed there, she's all like, oh, you sweet little pumpkin, why don't you now take these flowers to the speaking cave and offer them as a tribute? So you go there. Okay. And once you're done, you find out that she's not quite done with you because you need to head deep into the interchange and grab something called the growth stimulant for her. Something pivotal to her ultimate plan. But if while in the interchange you happen to stumble upon evidence of a particularly vocal doctor and evidence of said doctor's key, that which belongs to the cellar of the church in Wyndham, well, you might just decide to take a break from the crazy flower lady and investigate that lead instead. Making your way to the church and into the basement, you hear a man's voice call out, telling you to step into the light slowly where he can see you. Quickly though, the man realizes you're not who he was expecting. This is Dr. Alan Holder in the flesh, years after the incident and his desperate escape from the quarantined interchange. As a result of being nearly killed by Garrow's maniacal actions all those years ago, Holder has grayed skin and bright, piercing blue eyes. Like many of the other infected individuals that aren't quite feral, those who maintained their cognitive abilities. He's a little confused about why you've shown up at his lab, but ultimately you help him connect the dots, and he tells you that his goal is to solve this horrible mess and destroy Oberon. Dr. Holder is rather based. He says that in order to save the good people of Cumberland and potentially the entire world from Oberon and its fungal spread, he needs you to retrieve something called Sample 1 from much deeper inside the interchange in the medical section. Sample 1 was the first ever sample taken from Oberon that included the fungus. Once you retrieve it, fighting through these really tanky thrall enemies, basically zombified hazmat dudes, you return to Holder and he explains his plan to poison the sample and infect Oberon with it. Holder then asks about his old friend, Dr. Garrow, and from here you contemplate on what to say. You could tell him where Garrow is, but who knows what kinds of actions a man would take against an old colleague that doomed him to die in a fungus-infected death trap only years prior.
Far from the keep in the trees on the knoll.
It's here where we reach the point of significant conflict between characters that can lock off certain endings depending on which you side with. So let's go ahead and cover each of the 6 endings in respective order to what we've just gone over already, concluding the main leads. Each of the 6 endings generally go down the path of fully seeing through what each of the main characters want you to do, accomplishing their goal for or with them. But often, rather than being your teammate, you're really just a pawn to them. And no character makes that clearer than the operator, Mr. Phone Man.
Hello, I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night.
The operator has a simple ending. His path acts as the wild card choice that's always present if you decide to literally kill every other main character. He can't be killed and thus is always your last-ditch option. Bro's goal is simple. Just kill Oberon. To do this, you need to get access to Oberon's room, found through a tunnel in the interchange that leads directly into the Atom plant. And then, well, just kill him. Blow it up with a self-destruct sequence and that'll probably do it. After you do the deed, Phone Guy says to meet him at where you started, bookending the game beautifully. Instead of waking up from a nap off the bed, you take a nap on the floor. He knocked you out with some sleepy gas, and what happens next is unclear, though he says that he's not gonna kill you. Thus, you can only hope that you're not going to wake up missing a kidney. But after you pass out, you get a pretty dope cutscene with the operator, which notably has much higher quality voiceover and a better performance by the operator than with the other 5 endings. Real quick, I'll show you what I mean with the comparison.
You have learned much and come far. It certainly seems to have worked.
If you decide the operator's kinda lame though, you could always go towards siding with General Sims to the end. This is accomplished by following his instruction in traveling to the Speaking Cave in Casterfell Woods and collecting a lost radio part that the Protocol faction needs so that they can finally contact the outside. Once you head there, retrieve it and make your way back, Sims tasks you with, you guessed it, blow up Oberon. Once you do, same little thing of casually arming the self-destruct. You make your way back and find Wyndham Village has been attacked by the Druids. A message left by Sims tells you to meet him in Skethermore, so you head there and, helicopter's coming to evacuate you and Sims. So the whole Wyndham Village getting attacked by Druids thing is just not a big deal. Wow, Sims, that was cold, even for you. But it hardly pales in comparison to what he says next.
By the end of next week, there won't be so much as a beetle still alive in Brazil. Can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, eh?
Okay, but...
Fuck it!
Bro is a little too happy about the impending genocide he's about to commit. Oh yeah, and by the way, the plan to nuke the whole area as a solution to the problem. Fun fact, that plan is called, you guessed it, Atomfall. If taking the Hiroshima approach is too much for you, then let's rewind our commitment to Sims and go down one of the other paths, Dr. Garrow. After you go to the Casterfell Dam for her and input a specific code in the terminal to wipe all the data there, she simply wants you to get her a sample from Oberon. I mean, that's why she came back to the zone in the first place, and she won't leave without it. So you head to Oberon's site, drill it, grab your sample, and then you just kinda head back to her and the two of you leave through a hidden passage inside the robotics section, dooming the zone, its inhabitants, and potentially the world, because not only are you taking a sample of this insanely dangerous shit outside of the quarantine, but if the quarantine itself fails and Oberon spreads outside of it by its own means, it could feasibly spread over the entire planet. But for Dr. Garrow, that doesn't matter because she got what she wanted. But let's rewind again. You could instead, like me, blow her brains out.
Are you insane?
Maybe you go with Tanner's ending, though it's not all that different. To save you the headache, TLDR after you go to the same damn Garrow wanted you to go to, but instead inputting a different code for Tanner, which transfers all the data onto a disk for her, she has you collect a sample of Oberon, and then finish it off, having the thing just self-destruct. Afterwards, you meet her in the woods near the bunker before she fucks you over. Looks like you're going to Russia, but it's not going to be a vacation. Off to the Gulag.
Good morning.
Where am I? Where's Reznov?
Hey, wake up.
Luckily, going to the Gulag isn't your last option, because on the other hand, you could embrace the other prominent woman of Casterfell Woods, Mother Jago. Yeah, she a bit of a freak, but sometimes that's what you need. And what she needs is for you to take the growth stimulant collected from the interchange, then head over to Oberon, replacing the flame retardant sprayers with the growth stimulant, so you can give Oberon a creamy surprise. What the f was I thinking when I wrote that? This is like Viagra for mushrooms. Yeah, the blue ones. So after you do whatever the f that was, Mother Jago starts speaking to you in your mind, and she's like, go to the Fungusy. And once you arrive, she's like,
I think you should jump.
I don't think I want to.
Why don't you show a little follow through, Chelsea? Jump.
Is the Fungusy ending canon? I hope not. But what probably is canon, or at least what is going to be considered probably by many as the good ending, is the one you reach by siding with Giga Chad Dr. Holder. Wait, I just realized with his skin being all gray, he's already like halfway to being basically Giga Chad. Holy shit. Anyway, if you decide to tell Holder where Garrow is inside the interchange, he's like, okay. Then when you head back to the interchange, you hear this.
Hello, is somebody in here? Good Lord, I can hardly believe it. Alan Holder. Are you just gonna stand there? What is it you want?
That.
If he wasn't already the most based character, I don't know what to say. Bro has his priorities straight. After executing Garrow, he gives you the poisoned sample 1. And much like how Mother Jago had you spray the growth sample onto Oberon, Holder has you spray the poison onto the artifact. After finishing off Oberon, you then meet Holder in the medical tunnels, and the two of you escape the zone down an oddly suspicious hatch.
Never need to walk in Casterfell Wood.
That wraps up the 6 main leads, and I found it interesting how there were 2 examples of pairs of opposite kind of actions. For example, Garrow's path has you inputting a code in the dam that directly conflicts and cancels out your ability to do Tanner's ending, which on the other hand requires a code that cancels out Garrow's. The example of Mother Jago and Holder, both using the sprayers on Oberon, similarly use the same method of delivery, yet one is fostering the artifact's growth while the other dooms it to die. But beyond the main leads of the game, there's a bit more to Atomfall's narrative than you might expect. Multiple references to Shakespeare and other British writers, the rather unnerving display of cult effigies, sacrifices, and the political conflicts between Russia and the UK are present in the background of Atomfall if you go out of your way to find them. For example, Shakespeare is referenced a few times, both direct and indirectly. You're able to find a note from a history book referencing Kepler's star, which was a supernova that occurred in 1604, about 12 years prior to Shakespeare's death. Later, while you're speaking with Garrow in the interchange, she makes mention that Oberon fell at some point during Shakespeare's time, potentially hinting that Oberon originated from the Kepler star supernova somehow. Then there's the more direct reference. The name Oberon is actually from one of Shakespeare's plays, A Midsummer Night's Dream, in which Oberon is the king of the Fae and a powerful spirit of nature. It's some level of irony, the fact that the scientists named the meteorite after him, and it turns out that the fungus that dwelled inside it is like a nature spirit speaking to those who are infected, like the druids. It goes even further, calling for the destruction of technology and the restoration of nature. It's kinda on the nose. On the other hand, if, like me, you were wondering what the hell the druids were doing with their strangely woven together stick statues, there's an explanation for that as well. While the evidence for the real-life construction of Wicker Man structures could date them back as far as the 1st century BC, they've been observed in more modern eras as well, acting as basically the vessels for sacrifices of either non-human animals or, like in Atomfall, people. When I realized what these were in-game, it made me pretty unsettled, and I was hoping I could burn it down or something, but I suspected the structures are more or less static. These wicker men can be found all around the Casterfell Woods and are a constant reminder of what the druids do to non-believers. Now, zooming out a little bit, Russia, once they caught onto the existence of the meteorite, wasn't just gonna let this thing happen. After all, they clearly cared about being a powerful nation, and this could be a turning point, a revolutionary new material, or on the other hand, a weapon. Not long before the initial resonance feedback and everything that followed, a small group of Russian spies successfully infiltrated the atom plant, but unfortunately their timing was not great because they were pretty much there just in time for everything to go wrong. Russia lost contact with this group, and that is why they sent Tanner in, both to find the lost comrades, but also to collect a sample of Oberon and then destroy the main source so that they, Russia, could have the edge over their enemies. Not exactly an uncommon motive for a Russian spy in media, but it's believable. While we've been so focused on the story of Atomfall, I haven't really taken a moment to express how generally good the game is. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Fallout, but honestly, I'd compare this more to games like We Happy Few, The Outer Worlds, or even Prey. Atomfall takes you through some incredible rural British environments, and while the endings are left very ambiguous and the story itself isn't the largest in scope, that is perfect for people with simple peanut brains like mine that can deeply appreciate a smaller but very densely packed game like this. It takes about 20 to 24 hours maybe to platinum if you're taking your time, from what I understand. Most of all, the story of Atomfall is really unique because of the way it handles leads. You, alongside your character, are essentially putting together the whole picture through often very interconnected and overlapping facts based on what people wrote, what they say, what they do, and how it causes changes in the narrative, from something as minor as omitting key information to a character, or as permanent and final as ending their life.
The woods are dark and the woods lie deep.
But with all that in mind, what's next for Atomfall? Much like Cyberpunk 2077, I suspect with rather compelling evidence that Atomfall will add an additional ending or two in its upcoming story DLC. Based on a plethora of notes from a bandit group you can find scattered around the game's main zone, you're able to find one in particular which mentions that the group's leader is trying to get their hands on a boat, and wouldn't you know it, in the game files, DLC 0 is shown as something called Grove Island, which could suggest a bandit group or set of main story missions located on said island. Hell, you can even see an island with some kind of large structure on it in-game. Furthermore, there's a folder with the name Bandit Fight Club in the same directory, which again adds to the evidence that this DLC will feature a bandit-type group. Other than that, the 6 endings to the base game are really all we get in terms of any suggestions as to what may be next. Will we further get any DLCs that allow us to see what happens after the main endings? Probably not. Most games don't seem to like doing that, but hey, Atomfall seems to be doing its own thing, and maybe that'll result in a different approach to endings in future content, DLC or not. But what do you think? Have you played Atomfall? What do you think about its story? During my playthrough, I was actually really curious to know from you guys what impact the player feels by having the, protagonist this silent and seemingly emotionless. Does it subtract or add to your experience of the game? Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe for more Story Explained videos covering releases new and old. As always, thanks for watching.
For the trees stand close, are watered in blood. Stay out of that place, be you blithe, be you